Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where the question du jour is, should we make the next movie in this franchise? Some of the answers are obvious, some not so obvious, so I'm excited to hear your thoughts down below. Time to not only put on your business hat, but to play studio executive. But first I want to talk about poor Nia DaCosta, who seems to have pretty bad luck. First, she got caught in the Disney Plus trap with the Marvels. Also, Brie Larson's push, maybe for a more feminist take on the character. It's a little harder to tell what happened behind the scenes in that regard. I mean, DaCosta certainly has proven to be, sometimes she seems like a feminist filmmaker, sometimes not. I mean, that's not the case with the Bone Temple at all. But it is well known that it was Brie Larson's idea to put Kamala Khan in the Marvels. Then DaCosta decided to prioritize her upcoming smaller film, Hedda, instead of this studio franchise juggernaut that was slipping out of her control, especially as Kevin Feige was panicking post-Quantum Mania. It's an understandable gamble, but one that did not pay off, because Hedda didn't really seem to connect with anyone. Not audiences, not the press, not awards voters, and not even film Twitter. Then, while almost everyone who's seen The Bone Temple agrees that DaCosta knocked it out of the park, not a lot of people saw The Bone Temple because of the stink that still lingers that Danny Boyle put on it with the last entry. And this latest installment has massively underperformed at the box office. The Bone Temple is the only new release for a holiday weekend, Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. Usually, Hollywood releases at least 2 movies in this frame, and sometimes at least one of them is somewhat aimed at Black audiences. Hollywood has also had tremendous success with this holiday weekend with big, diverse blockbusters. The Bone Temple? Well, it's a pretty white movie set in the UK, and Black audiences, in fact, dipped in the demographics for this latest entry. So, what might be the fallout because of this huge disappointment? Where's the blame gonna go? So, if I were pointing fingers, I'd point it at Alex Garland. It's his fault. That's who I would put this on. He's wildly uneven as a writer and a director and seems hell-bent on not making a super successful movie. I bet somebody gives him notes and was like, Alex, I think this might be really successful. And he's like, hold on, let me make some changes. In fact, both he and Danny Boyle have awful worldwide numbers. Neither has really been able to get past 150 global. Oh, that's so bad. With one exception for Boyle, with 2008's Slumdog Millionaire. And he's never come even close to that since. Looks like the Bond franchise might have really dodged a bullet. And they were considering maybe Aaron Taylor Johnson. Although Aaron Taylor Johnson's probably like, see, it's not, I mean, is it him or is his stink as well just so bad that it's flowed over to the second film? But yeah, I think Boyle and Garland will at least have to take a break from blockbuster franchise filmmaking. And don't cry for them. They can certainly go back to the world of low-budget art house movies where they made their names in the first place and I'm sure are still well received. The stakes there are low, and again, the budgets are low, much less risk. Although you're supposed to do well in the awards space if you're there, and it's been a minute since either one of them has been able to do well in the awards space. And that's not great either. I'd be like, what? And I guess you could argue they're entertaining people, but not that many people. I'm like, again, movies are either supposed to make money or win awards, and Boyle and Garland ain't doing either. Bottom line, I think what's particularly damning is that this and Civil War are nerfed opportunities, just too big to ignore. Audiences were interested. Heck, audiences were excited thanks to fantastic concepts and killer trailers, only for the audiences to then be massively let down. For the most part, I'm sure someone's like, I liked those movies. Well, that's good, but it's like there's always an outlier. All right, so now Nia DaCosta's The Marvels didn't fare much better than 150 global, a box office number made all the worse when you take into account that it's a Marvel number. I mean, that's really bad. I thought it would be low, but I'd forgotten how low it was when I looked it up, and I was like, ooh. So while I think Nia DaCosta is extremely talented, here's the problem from a studio executive perspective. It's a lot of misses in a row. I mean, this looks bad. I mean, you can explain each one away individually. Candyman, script issues. The Marvels, studio interference. Hedda, This one's a little harder. What do you think the problem is here? I think it might be bad timing, not enough studio support. They barely advertised this thing. And perhaps maybe Tessa Thompson. She hasn't really connected with audiences either and has had a couple of flops. Her star isn't exactly on the rise anymore. And now The Bone Temple, stuck being the sequel to a poorly received movie. But that's 4 flops in a row, as I said. So while I believe in her talent, I don't want my next movie, my project that I'm in charge of, to be flop number 5. And even if it is just bad luck, get that bad luck away from me, man. So what is Nia DaCosta to do? Well, a part of me would still hire her for Alien Romulus 2 if I were a Disney Fox executive. I'd be like, you know what? Fede Alvarez was in a pretty bad spot when I hired him. Turned out great. And look at these amazing audience scores for The Bone Temple. I mean, men fail upward all the time. Why not Nia DaCosta? I would just make sure the budget was very responsible. I'd be like, come over here, Nia DaCosta, but I can't give you that much money. But I think she would be really good with Alien Romulus too. I think she'd be a good choice. And I think comparing her to Fede Alvarez, she's much more talented than Fede Alvarez in my opinion, but I think that's a pretty good comparison. Now, maybe she should direct 28 Years Later 3 with Cillian Murphy. I don't know if I'd still make this movie if I were Sony. Considering, 2 bad cameras haven't already rolled, because when you look at Bone Temple's box office, it's not just soft, but again, as I said, a massive disappointment, even when Sony and the industry lowered the bar for what they were hoping for. This is less than half of the last movie's opening. Where are they going to go from here? And also, these movies aren't cheap. They're like $60 million a pop. Maybe if they could make one for $30 million, maybe I would consider it. Especially because, I'd say I already made 2, but boy, is interest fading fast. What do you think? Who's responsible for this poor performance? Would you give DaCosta a 5th shot? And what would that shot be? Should she go make her own film and try and reverse this downward trend? Or would you still give her a studio franchise film? And then, would you still greenlight 28 Years Later 3? They haven't started rolling, I don't believe. They haven't started rolling cameras. And also, if you were to still greenlight it, what would you be willing to spend on it in terms of budget? So yeah, the question of the day is, would you make the next movie in the franchise? And let's ask that of Avatar. Oh, get ready, Avatar defenders. You guys are a loyal bunch. That's great. But you're still not going to get it to $2 billion. I think that's becoming very clear. Now, yeah, sure, it was great news that it managed to hold on to the number 1 spot, even after 28 Years Later was expected to dethrone it. But I don't know if it's the strength of Avatar that did it. It's the weakness of the Bone Temple that did it. I think that's an important distinction. Because at the rate it's going, as I said, it's going to end around $1.5 billion. Exactly where I predicted it would go with my head, not my gut. I did both. And the reasoning I said for 1.5 was that was the same percentage of the last movie's box office as you compare Wicked and Wicked for Good. Similar drops. It could get as high as 1.8, 1.5 to 1.8, somewhere in that zone. But it's not going to make it to $2 billion. For instance, The Way of Water for Martin Luther King Jr. weekend was doing 32 for the 3-day, 39 for the 4-day. Fire and Ash is doing 13.3 for the 3-day, 17 for the 4-day. That's a huge discrepancy. That's a huge deterioration of the franchise, let's say. With a $400 million budget, it's still making a profit, which is good, with the 2.5 rule, 2.5 times your budget. But again, if the franchise has started to deteriorate, what would the next one come in at? What would Avatar 4 do at the box office? Can Jimmy see? Is there a way for him to make these for less money? Would he be willing to make them for less money? The man has a huge ego, and there's a very good chance he might decide to cash in his blue chips while he can still go out relatively on top. Because again, he doesn't know how the next one's going to go. If this one's going to fall noticeably under $2 billion, it's not even going to be like 1.9. He's getting beaten by Zootopia 2. Where's the next one come in? Does the next one maybe not make $1 billion? I know some of you, again, you're like, don't write off Jimmy C, but it's a depreciation. I think that because Avatar is now owned by Disney with a massive presence in their theme park that's only expanding, it will never totally go away. Disney does not nobody in Hollywood lets IP die these days, but Disney is the main person. And so you might say in 5 years, you get an animated project, and maybe in 10 years, you get another movie, either from Jimmy C or someone else. I mean, Disney's not so good at reviving franchises, but in their defense, they've done a much better job with their Fox franchises than they have with their in-house franchises. Also, in 5 to 10 years, who knows what the Disney leadership will look like at that time? They might be hitting home run after home run. That'd be nice. And they're still winning the box office even now. Interestingly, I think Disney is dealing with a similar problem here with Avatar that HBO is having with Game of Thrones. And that is there is a huge fandom here, but increasingly high budgets that are difficult for the scope of the company. You know, $20 million an episode for Game of Thrones. HBO just can't sustain that. $400 million movie for Avatar. And also intense creative ownership by a single, very aggressive older individual. You know, someone who the fans have intense faith in, doesn't really leave a lot of creative space for any other voices. And, you know, only has so much time in the day to work on these things. HBO tonight will begin an experiment with a cheaper story out of Game of Thrones, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and let's see how that works out. It might be slow goings out of the gate, but we'll see where we are at the end of 6 weeks once all the episodes have aired. If that works out, definitely Disney and other studios will pay attention to that. What would you do with Avatar going forward? Realistically, not what you want to see as a fan, but again, you're a studio executive. Would you greenlight another $400 million film? But there's no question that Disney is making Zootopia 3 and Lionsgate, they finally have a win, is definitely making The Housemaid 2. Both movies have the lowest drops in the top 10 for this weekend, despite both being in theaters for more than a month. In fact, in its 8th weekend at the box office, that just 12% drop for Zootopia 2 is absolutely incredible. What's more, thanks to Asia, Zootopia 2 is now the highest grossing animated movie out of Hollywood of all time. Ne Zha 2 is still higher out of China. That puts Zootopia ahead of fellow Disney animated franchises Toy Story, Frozen, and The Incredibles, and then competing animated juggernauts from other studios like Despicable Me and Super Mario. That is absolutely incredible. Remember, it felt like Zootopia wasn't getting any love, at least outside of Asia, although, you know, that investment to build the park, the theme park component there first really literally paid off. But that's just incredible that it's bigger than all of those. It's close to $2 billion, in fact. And if you take a look at this all-time top 10, you'll see that the $2 billion club is really taking over. Almost all the movies in the all-time top 10 worldwide are $2 billion films, which means, interestingly, that Fire and Ash might not even make it into the all-time top 10 when the first two movies are at the very top. Get ready to see more Zootopia across the Disney empire as the mouse works to cash in on a hit as only they can. As for The Housemaid, I believe Sydney Sweeney has found her formula. A very sexy movie where she teams up with a hot guy, a very scantily clad film, and together they counter-program the holidays. And it has range, this formula. The first was a comedy, now we have a thriller. I saw it yesterday. It was a lot of fun. I really, really liked it. I liked both these movies, actually. I thought they were both very good. I liked The Housemaid a touch more because I like thrillers a little bit more, and the twist there was really, really good. Interestingly, The Housemaid, though, isn't getting the same media attention that she and Glenn Powell enjoyed, although, of course, they did play up that rumor that they were dating in real life, something that Liam Neeson and Pam Anderson tried to duplicate, but did not have nearly as much success. If any really success, interestingly. Anyway, while not that many people are talking about The Housemaid, it is quietly making money. And Lionsgate, again, as we all know, really needed this win and has already greenlit a sequel. As for the rest of the top 10, while Marty Supreme has still barely begun to play overseas, it is now A24's highest grossing film domestic of all time. Oscar noms hit Thursday. We're going to have a good time talking about them. And that might give Marty Supreme yet another push with expected noms in most of the major categories. Although, if I were them, I'd quit telling everyone they were thinking of actually making Mr. Wonderful's character a vampire at the end of the movie. It not only cheapens the film, you could see A24's reaction when it was pitched to them, but I think it undercuts one of the best lines in the movie. It actually made me think a little bit less of the film and those that made it, that they even thought that that was an acceptable idea to do with it. One battle after another is like, yes, send that to more people. Then Primate fell 55%. How do you feel if that? I mean, I don't want to ruin Marty Supreme, but that was a real shocker that not only happened, but that they would admit it to anyone. All right. So anyway, that's why, studio executives aren't always bad. They said that's the dumbest idea we ever heard. And luckily, Josh Safdie and Timothée Chalamet listened. All right. So anyway, then Primate fell 55% in its second weekend, which is pretty darn good for a horror movie. But the box office numbers here simply aren't materializing. It's not making any money. But still, I'm sure it wasn't expensive to make, and Paramount can feel good that hardcore horror fans did enjoy the film. And you never know, maybe it'll do well on digital. I mean, I do think that hardcore horror is definitely a space to keep an eye on. And if I were a producer or a studio executive, I would be at least thinking of trying to develop a project in that space. All right, then I don't think I could watch it myself, but I could certainly make money off of it, right? And speaking of franchises, there's still life left in Lord of the Rings, with its re-release doing okay. If only Warner Brothers could figure out what to do with it next. They're going to go for The Hunt for Gollum, coming out 2027. But while Peter Jackson and company are producing, its star Andy Serkis, who is directing. And well, he hasn't had very good luck as a director either. And as a studio executive, he would make me nervous as well. In fact, I would not have agreed to let him to direct this movie. Be like, I'm sorry. I just can't let you do it. Let's look at your movies together. Or at least with Peter Jackson, and be like, really? Why don't you pay for this, Peter, if you're so, or at least half of it, if you're so sure of his Andy Serkis's ability to overcome this losing streak? What do you think? Would you have allowed Andy Serkis to direct The Hunt for Gollum? Moving over to Nielsen's charts for mid-December, still no heated Rivalry, fam. And the even worse news is that this would have been the week of episode 5 of 6, when many of you feel the show had already started to gain in popularity. I believe some of you said it was around episode 4 that people started to watch, and this is past that point. But you know what? Even if it never shows up on Nielsen, it's still a huge pop culture phenomenon, driving huge social media chatter, the stars showing up at the Golden Globes and everywhere else, being hounded by the paparazzi, and already a topic on SNL. Plus, they got their season 2. It will continue, so that's fantastic. But speaking of season 2s, where is the announcement for Welcome to Derry season 2? Because you can see, even the week after it wrapped, it's still enjoying a binge bump. In fact, it went up a spot to now be number 9 on the overall chart. So I think it's got to be that Warner Brothers being sold is complicating things. So Warner Brothers was officially for sale in late October and announced a deal with Netflix in early December. And I do not believe that any new deals for HBO shows nor Warner Brothers movies have been made since then. Interesting. How long are they going to put a freeze on new deals? It could take quite a long time for the Netflix deal to not only go through, but to be approved by multiple governments. Stranger Things, Landman, and Knives Out were still all huge this week. Fallout, though, has the opposite problem of heated Rivalry. It's able to chart, even here on the overall chart, but ain't nobody talking about it. I'm not surprised at all. I even didn't review it because I was like, there's nothing here. On the originals chart, I'll be curious to see if Fallout numbers drop as the season continues. I don't know. I've seen only, I think, 5 of the episodes. Maybe it gets real good at the end. On the originals chart, Percy Jackson season 2 is on here, towards the bottom, but it's on here. And there's Pluribus, finally. Although how Apple says it's their most watched show, when Ted Lasso and Severance did much better on Nielsen, is a question. And perhaps the answer is that Pluribus is a huge hit internationally. It's a very international coded show, so that's certainly a strong possibility. Then on the movies chart, this was smack middle on the holiday season, and you can definitely see that reflected here. But look at this. This is amazing. People are watching Red 1. Dwayne Johnson did it. He made a movie that would become something that people watched every year for the holidays. And it's Prime Video's only movie on this chart. So perhaps at some point in the future, in some way, Red 1 might return for another story. That's really interesting. That's great. Dwayne Johnson also could use that good news. With Netflix's charts for just last week, Stranger Things 5 definitely has lost its sheen. It's still here on the chart, but you would think just 1 week after the very final episode of the series ever, it would be doing a little better than it is. Also, I thought it was very telling that on Saturday Night Live last night, when Finn Wolfhard, during his monologue, said that the show had ended, there was just silence until after a moment, a really discernible beat. The audience was like, oh yeah, we should clap. It is climbing the all-time chart, though, and it's now at number 6. But I thought to myself, this chart is for viewership in the first 91 days. But by releasing shows in parts, does that allow shows to cheat? Because is it 91 days from the first installment or the last installment? That, to me, is an interesting question. Anyway, Stranger Things 5 is about 25 million views behind Stranger Things 4, which I think it should be able to clear even as it slows down, especially if it's 91 days from the series finale, which was on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve. But yeah, I've seen some commentary that the Stranger Things damage is comparable to the damage done to Star Wars, and I think that's a pretty good comparison, actually. But you never know. Look, there's Tessa Thompson at number 1 with John Bernthal. So good for her and good for him. Although the audience score is not great, so I wouldn't expect it to stay up there too long. And people sure do love Harlan Coben thrillers. This is a reliable franchise for Netflix. With movies, K-pop has slipped back out of the top 3, but only to number 4. While new rom-com People We Meet on Vacation had a solid debut. But I'm very curious to see the viewership numbers that will come out next week for the R.I.P., Netflix's Martin Luther King Jr. holiday weekend movie. Netflix is insisting that it would release Warner Brothers movies in theaters, but isn't this a movie that maybe should have gone to theaters? It's very much coded as a streaming movie. When you watch it, you're like, woo, this sure is a streaming movie. And I think that what really makes it work is the third act. And it's a little bit rocky until it gets there, but I think the third act is fantastic. But, it trended on Friday night. People were definitely talking about it, and it has solid audience scores. Plus, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck went above and beyond promoting this film. They did a great job. So we were just looking at Martin Luther King Jr. weekend movies over the years, and I think that The Rip would have fit in perfectly and maybe could have done, even though it's kind of streaming movie coded, which they admitted, there's a different writing structure for movies that are on streaming. I think it could have done well in theaters, but Netflix didn't even try to release it in theaters. They didn't even do the 17-day window thing. Remember, as we always say, pay attention not to what they say, but to what they do. Then on digital, with Apple's charts, it's the usual suspects over here. A lot of movies we saw just last week. Predator Badlands, still on top. Hooray! Or huzzah, as they said on The Great. That was a great show. I think they kind of ran out of steam by the end of it, but it was really, really good. It really helped the careers of both Elle Fanning and, oh my God, Nicholas Hoult, aka Lex Luthor. I got his name. I got it eventually. But as you can see, award season is really starting to heat up, especially after the Golden Globes, where a lot of the wins got people to check out those films. Even Sentimental Value, where Stellan Skarsgård walked away with Best Supporting Actor, is just right outside the top 10. As for this coming weekend, it seems it will be another easy win for Avatar because of the lack of competition. James Cameron will take it, as Only Mercy is hitting theaters, which to me really looks like a streaming movie. This one looks like a streaming movie, but The Rip and the upcoming Wrecking Crew to me look like theatrical releases. What to you is the difference between what should go on streaming and what should be in theaters? Back in the day, they used to release movies that were only okay in theaters, and they did quite well, but I guess also streaming didn't exist either. Also, hey, if there are no big new movies hitting, maybe The Bone Temple might have some good staying power. Maybe? Do you think you might go see The Bone Temple after all, considering such good word of mouth? But the bad box office is not going to help. That's going to just drive more people to say they'll wait to watch it, if at all. Then on digital on Tuesday, the new SpongeBob movie hits. While on streaming, Springsteen will go to Hulu on Friday, and The Smashing Machine from A24 will go to HBO Max, and they just recently renewed that deal. Finally, with shows, tonight is the premiere episode of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, a beautiful show that starts at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time because it's only half an hour. This first episode's about 40 minutes or a little longer than that. I really hope you check it out. I hope you give it a whirl. even watch tomorrow morning with your breakfast or your lunch. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Don't put too high expectations on it. And I think you'll be like, oh, this is a charmer. This is a gem. But we'll see how it does. Why do people tune into Game of Thrones? Is it just for all the very R-rated elements? We'll find out. But then that would really hurt George R.R. Martin. They'd be like, George, they don't care about the storytelling. All right. Then on Wednesday, Hulu has Ryan Murphy's latest, The Beauty, which is a ripoff of The Substance. Prime Video is already in the Sophie Turner business with Steel, and it's the final season of Queer Eye on Netflix, as well as a new version of Star Search. Netflix also has a reality show based on comedian Bert Kreischer dropping Thursday. Well, someone's going to try and climb one of the tallest buildings in the world live. It's a little dicey to do that live. Like, what? Okay. But kudos to Netflix for continuing to experiment with live events. And we'll see what this does for them. We'll see if this, you got to do something to cut through the noise these days. And maybe this is it. We'll see. Do you think you might watch that? I mean, people watched Chairs for Avengers Doomsday, but, people were already invested in that franchise. All right, and that's this week's movie, Matt. I mean, maybe if there was stuff at different floors as he climbed to reveal, maybe something like that. I don't know. I don't know if just climbing the building is enough. Well, we'll see. All right, and that's this week's movie math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what are your thoughts on the future of franchises like Avatar, Stranger Things, and 28 Years Later? I mean, Zootopia is a slam dunk, but feel free to share your thoughts about that as well. Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.